Metafix is a show that teaches you how to think in the metagame. I am not here to give you the answers, nor am I going to tell you how to win. Metafix teaches you how to play in the metagame and how to react around the metagame and what is in the metagame. If you're looking for the answers, try HC Realms, check the forums, they have all kinds of neat toys and tools and teams being brought up, and check the results of a lot of the ROC tournaments or any Worlds tournaments to see how teams played out and what teams were used for. I'm just here to help you think. Alright, the secondary market has seen probably one of the most shocking sets ever to be introduced to the Heroclix realm. That is, of course, Trinity War, or Trinity War. I say that because I've got a character here who's a super rare, who's worth 2 of the characters I'm actually going to talk about. This is the key time to go chasing, though, guys, and allow me to explain. Batman, by the way, is really good. We have stuff to talk about with regards to him soon. So the chases in the Trinity War set are worth talking about. Not all of them are great. Some of them are just good. So I'm going to start by kind of weeding out and explaining my thought process on how some of these are okay but not great. I want to say Envy is the one I really wanted to be awesome, and he didn't turn out to be awesome enough for me to want to play him. His Perplex is neat, where you can use Perplex. If he targets another character, you can modify the same combat value on Envy. That's probably one of the best forms of Perplex that I've seen. I've seen it before. I believe it was Damon Baird from the Gears of War set had that kind of Perplex, where if I Perplex up that guy's attack, I get +1 attack too, which is really cool. And he's pretty good overall with his stats. They're not terrible, though he does have a couple 9 attacks and some really bad last click. As a whole, he's not as tough as most of them, but at 107 points, he's mediocre at best. Not meta, but cool. Wrath is one of the ones that really wanted to be amazing, and he turned out to be pretty good. The ability to give out your opponent Battle Fury is neat, but it does kind of make you go, am I willing to give up the chance to have Shape Change? Shape Change is, of course, one of the most important rollouts that exists, or saving throws as some of them like to refer to. But his ability to give opposing characters Wrath tokens when they make an attack, then they have Battle Fury, which means they have to wait to attack again at range, which is... Wrath can really curb the range game, but he's 117 points to do it. And he can bring in the Wrath Relic, which is great. And if you're playing a strictly close combat team, it's good, but strictly close combat teams in a 300-point game, when 117 points has already been taken up to make that happen, is forcing it. You don't want to force the issue too hard sometimes because, you know. So we move on to Lust.
Did you break his tentacles?
I hope not. Nope. His tentacles are tough. Lust. Opposing characters can't make ranged combat attacks if they are adjacent to another character. So it's forcing your opponent to spread. That's actually a really good effect. I don't know if there's a lot of weasels in the current tactics metagame. We have to see how that turns out. But that's just important because it's not just adjacent to an opposing character and stopping something specific like Sharpshooter. It means your opponents can't be hugging each other to make ranged combat attacks. I think that's a really cool effect to spread out opponents. Now, of course, that means you can't rely on Energy Explosion, but not a lot of teams do in the current game. And there's not a lot of Energy Explosion flying around, even though it's really great. He has a cool Plasticity Charge combo that he doesn't start with, unfortunately. And he's one of those characters he's going to force a situation that your opponent might not be comfortable with, and he's also going to kind of hold things in once he gets there. Neat effect, probably better in Sealed, to say the least. Now, here's where things start to get a little bit more in the competitive mindset. Pride, whenever an opponent, she got a trait, whenever an opposing character rolls a critical hit, put a Pride token on this card, give Pride a free action, remove a Pride token, and her next attack is a critical hit and can't be rerolled. That's insane if you think about what kind of effect that can have in general. Her stats are mediocre at best, but they should come with probability control, which is probably one of the most important powers in the game. A 3 range with hypersonic, so she can shoot from 2. Also very good. Don't force close combat unless you have to with her. And then, of course, she comes with defend, leadership, toughness, and colossal stamina in her defense ability. Which means, okay, so she takes 1 and she loses that, but the ability to take an action 3 times in a row is pretty cool coming with Quintessence and Mystical. An 18 defense to go with that, to share that 18 defense is also very good. Comes in at 127 points with a short dial, but Mystics, of course, seems to be costed in these characters very highly, and will punish your opponent for hitting them. So those are the 4 more combat focused sins. Now, one thing to remember is that, of course, these sins are each allowed to bring in their own relics, so it becomes the fact of, are you willing to bring in those relics, or do you need to bring in those relics? I think Lust's and Envy's relics out of these stand out really well, because Lust comes with plasticity, sidestep, and I believe it's either combat reflexes, energy explosion, or energy shield, which is really good. Envy comes with shared attack, sidestep, and energy shield, which, oh boy. Is really cool. But we got into these last 3. These last 3 fall into the control game, and they fall really well into the control game. Now, if you go back a couple episodes, I talked about control, balance, aggression, those types of strategies. And these guys really kind of find themselves in the control element. One kind of has his place in all teams, and I'm going to go with him first, and that's Greed. Greed is one of the ones that everybody's talking about right now. Why is everybody talking about him? Well, he's 67 points, which is incredibly low for a character with both Quintessence and Mystics. So already there, that's a shocking number. He comes with a trait. Of course, he can bring in Envy, or the Greed Sin, and put it on somebody. And as I've discussed in the episode about the Rocket Fraternity, the Greed Sin is really effective at its 10 range and being able to perplex opposing characters with resource or affected by a resource. Which, if you think about the metagame as a whole with tactics being introduced back in, not a lot of teams are going to say, well, I don't care about the Greed Relic. They all care about the Greed Relic. It also adds sidestep and energy shield. I mean, come on. Why not put that on an Atomica? Where he really stands out is he's got this white attack power that says he can use mind control, and when he does, if the hit character ends that action adjacent to Greed, give the hit character 2 action tokens. So, add into the fact that he's mind controlled, been able to do something, and then brought you over. Let's say you charge a character who's adjacent to Greed, or you running shot something away and bring that character next to Greed. Now they've got 2 action tokens. Even if they have Indomitable, they're sticking around. And then they're there. Now, where I want to go next is Greed's next trait. Not the one that brings in the Greed Relic, but rather one that brings in any relic. And that's any relic on Greed. Greed will now have the ability to bring any relic, 8 points or less, assigned to him by paying its cost. And it doesn't count towards your force. So you brought in the Greed Relic, you've brought in the special relic onto him, and you still haven't touched your ability to bring in a resource on top of that. That is a pretty insane combination of things to make work. And what's better is when you have that kind of relic options, there's so many things that you can do with this Greed to make theme teams, to make extra effects work with that mind control. He's really an effective character as a whole. There's very few teams that, he can't fit into. He can fit into anything just because of being able to add in a relic. So something to think about when you're thinking about these chases and what you're running after. Next one I want to talk about is... Yeah, I'll talk about him later. I always make lazy jokes when I talk about Sloth, by the way. Sloth is cool in the fact that he forces... If you force a close game, he's going to make that game obnoxious to your opponent, to say the least. He's got a trait. After an action is given to an opposing character within 4 squares resolves, that character given the action can't be given further actions this turn. Now, the key word on that is action, 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 action. That's not specific to free action, double power action, whatever. If If you take any kind of action within 4 squares of him, that's it. You can't do anything with that character anymore. That is its own green power battery of itself. That's even deeper than a green power battery. Where a green power battery will limit your free actions, Sloth is going to limit them all. So you either get to outwit, or you get to charge, or you get to attack. You don't get to do all of those in a single turn. So that's a pretty cool effect if you can keep the opponent close. Next is his white attack power. Opposing characters within 2 squares possess earthbound neutralized. So if they fly, if they're giant, if they're tiny, if they're indomitable, they aren't anymore. If they sharpshoot, they don't anymore. All of these kind of go away because of earthbound neutralized. As you can imagine, losing the ability to fly means you can't carry, you can't ignore a bunch of stuff for movement anymore. Losing Indomitable means you can't keep pushing. You lose giant reach within 2 squares of him, all of a sudden you're not going to be doing that 2 squares away attack, right? So these are more things to think about with regards to if you can bring the game in tight with Sloth and force a really close game, your opponent is not going to get the actions they need to kill you. As well, even Sloth comes with an 18 defense, a 12 attack with 8 range, triple target, incapacitate. Oof. And of course he has to bring in the Sloth Relic, which is probably one of the more potent ones, that gives a consistent +1 defense, sidestep, and when the character assigned it doesn't take any actions in a turn. That includes free actions, though, unfortunately. They get to heal one. I've thought of some good candidates for it, one of which would probably be Johnny Quick. You take your Alpha Strike, move back, and let him sit for another turn. Johnny Quick only takes 82 points of your team. You can think of the rest and do some damage with that. The last one I want to talk about is my personal favorite, and it's Gluttony.
Stop doing that!
Can't believe those little arms stayed attached. Gluttony is basically Jake Williams' strategy in a ball. Jake Williams at Dragon Con last year brought Bizarro, Headpool, and a Star Sapphire ring on a green battery. At the time, it was the only option you could get to get the Star Sapphire ring on characters. And that brought some shape change, and Entity was on Headpool to heal Bizarro. It was obnoxious. That's all that wrapped up in this. Gluttony has Quintessence. He's got mediocre stats at best. But once you get into his middle dial, like his second, third, fourth Clix, he's got some wackiness going on. First thing worth mentioning is that his defense power mitigates any damage dealt to him, including any pulse waves or anything like that. He's taking 1 damage at a time. When you have 6 clicks of health on a character like this, that's at bare minimum 6 damage being output if your opponent can get 6 attacks off on you properly. More importantly, he's got sidestep across most of his effective clicks. Very cool. And then he's got some more powers as he gets in. So once you get to the second click, he's got this power, feed from your Gluttony. He can use Steal Energy. So that's already obnoxious if he's starting to base you and he's starting to hit you and then he's starting to gain those clicks back. And opposing characters within 5 squares can't be healed. One of the things that very importantly came up is there's certain types of characters named zombies who die and then heal. Well, they don't heal anymore if they die pretty close to Gluttony. And any sort of healing, if you have a Steal Energy that your opponent's relying on, support within 5 squares, it's just not going to happen. And then he's got this Aura of Rotten Decay. Gluttony can use Exploit Weakness. Pretty cool. When Gluttony hits an opposing character, remove any relics and resource attachments assigned to it from the game. Relics and resource attachments can't be assigned to that character this game. A couple key notes is that happens on hit. Regardless of whether or not he's got Exploit Weakness or anything. If you're going up against an Indigo battery, say, or somebody else's power battery, any effect that they would have in retaliation to a hit that deals damage is not going to occur because, specifically the Violet one, let's go. Because the Violet one gives a Mystic Steam ability. So if Gluttony hits, the second you check for the hit occurs, they lose the Indigo construct from that. That's removed from the game. And then, I keep saying Indigo and it's Violet. You remove the Violet construct from the game. And now they've lost the Mystics from that ability once you check for damage, and it's gone. I've checked this on the WES. There's actually a forum, or there's actually a post that I asked a question on. So if you want to check my math on that one, that happened. And then now that character can't be given the Star Sapphire thing. So he's going to be very strong against those teams that, you know, rely on the Bizarro Star Sapphire strategy to slowly poke you down while you try to punish him for having that. And there are, of course, no limitations on how he can hit. So if you happen to find a way to give him range, I can think of a couple of rifle, then that hit still triggers or Rotten Decay, and then they'll do some stuff. So that's the 7 deadly sins in a nutshell. Some of them are competitive, some of them less so. But as the cheapest chases that have been released in a long time, some of them are worth getting. So get them while they aren't hot. That's it for Metafix this week. Just remember, guys, practice makes your team better.
The opinions and thoughts brought to you in Metafix are not meant for the casual game at the table. Married with Clix is brought to you by Majestic's Heroclix Sales down in Costa Mesa, California. Right now, they're in the middle of a storefront change. In the meantime, don't forget to check out their eBay store. If you check the link down below, they always have great Heroclix stuff at fantastic prices, and they'll ship just about anywhere.